Hi, everyone. This is Kona Shen from Camino. Thank you so much for joining the webinar today. We are going to get started in just a couple of minutes as we allow folks a little bit of extra time to get online and get settled in. Hi, everyone. Again, this is Kona Shen from Camino. We are so excited to have you here for today's webinar. And as you know, this is a special product webinar that will be led by Camino's very own co-founder and CSO, Nate Levine. Now, before we get started, I did want to mention that we love hearing your questions during these sessions. So please don't be shy about asking questions using that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will do our very best to answer questions as we go along, as well as leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. Now, Nate, to get us started, do you mind just sharing a little bit of information about Camino for anyone who isn't familiar with us, as well as explain why we wanted to host today's webinar?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank Hona for the intro, and super excited to be on this session with all of you today. And as Kona mentioned, this will be a little bit different from some of our other webinars that you might have attended. This is really designed for people who have seen something from Camino before, maybe a little while ago, and are looking for sort of a refresher or an update on new functionality that we've rolled out and some of the new releases. But rest assured that we will certainly make sure to give a context for people who maybe are still seeing this for the first time. So just to give a little intro on Camino, we are a software company based out of Silicon Valley, and we build technology for helping manage permit and licensing processes. Specifically, we focus on building a better customer experience so that your homeowners, business owners, and members of your community can get through their projects as easily as possible in a very service way. So yeah, a little excited to show you some of what we've been working on, and just to go over a little bit of the agenda. Again, we'll touch briefly on just kind of why we're running this session. We have a little poll that we're going to do for you just to gather some input from the audience on what they want to see. And then really the bulk of this, the majority of this time will be spent on the product itself, going through demonstrations. But as Kona mentioned, this is a little bit of a looser structure than we normally have, because we do want to make sure that this is driven by what is interesting to you all as a group. So if there's specific questions you have or specific things you learn about our technology, feel free to post those as questions, and we can kind of deviate from the agenda to test those.
And we also do
Um,
have a mix of people who are more familiar with Camino and, of course, less familiar with Camino. So we will do our best to cover all of those different kind of levels of familiarity. But, depending on your questions, also don't be shy if you would like to take this offline or do a follow-up demo. We can always build on this, and this can just be the starting point, depending what your questions are.
awesome. So yeah, so to address your question, Kona, of why we're running this webinar, well, like I said, we wanted to make sure people were getting a chance to see some of the new functionality that's been rolled out. Camino, we take what we call an agile approach to software development, which means that we're pretty always rolling out new functionality, usually on a monthly basis. So if if the last time you saw Camino was 6 months ago, there's a fair amount that we've probably rolled out in that time period. And this is a good chance to see some of what those new updates might be. We've also been running existing functionalities. So even if you're not interested in some of the new features, some of what we before has been updated. And then there are some just new use cases and products that we've released as a response to challenges of COVID that a lot of our partners and customers have been using. So again, just a lot of stuff that we wanted to make sure we were putting out there in case any of this might be interesting or useful to you.
Great. So I know that we want to go over some specific examples, and this will directly relate to the questions that we'll pose to you in the poll. So Nate, what examples did you want to cover to get us started?
Yeah. Again, we'll really focus on this when we get into the the technology itself. But these are some of the things that I'm going to highlight as we go through it. And you may have seen some of these if you are a current customer, been in the Camino system lately. But some of the items we wanted to highlight are data fields. These are a really powerful addition to our system that let you basically collect information and sort of have it auto-populate across different forms and rules and things in the system. So we'll touch on that. We have things like group task assignment. So if you want to be able to assign a task to, say, all inspectors, and then have inspectors go and kind of pull tasks down. Inspection scheduling, that's all done self-service online. And then we have some things, issuing documents and payment reports. So a lot of really cool, neat stuff that come out in the near future. And again, we're going to give a more holistic overview of the platform, but these are just some of the things that I'm going to make sure to pause and highlight. So, there, like Kona said, we do want to launch a little poll here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and hit the launch poll button. And so you should all see a notification in your system to respond to this. So, we'll leave this up for a little bit, take your time. But basically what we're just seeing is anything in particular that the audience might be, interested in seeing. And again, those are that we could maybe spend more time on.
And I should add that if you have something that you're curious about that you don't see here, that is definitely something we'd like to hear about using that Q&A button. So we'll do our best to incorporate anything that we haven't thought of.
All right, so looks like we got some answers coming in. This up for just another 10, 20 seconds.
Well, I'm glad that the poll button is working today because we're always a little bit at the mercy of Zoom. So thank you to everyone who's participating. It's interesting seeing these responses come in.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like, across the group, there's a fair number of people sort of interested in everything. But the two items that sort of stand out the most are virtual inspections and then group task assignments. So yeah, definitely we'll make sure to touch on the inspection side and the task assignment. This is helpful. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. But again, feel free, you have access to this QA feature at any time. So if there is anything else that you want to see or things you want us to, go back over, feel free to just take advantage of that.
And so, Nate, when it comes to the different solutions, of course, we'll be looking at this hands-on, but I always love this infographic. How do you like to explain the way that Camino works versus software that people might have seen in the past or something they're already using?
Yeah. So again, we just wanted to sort of remind, remind anybody on this webinar how Camino system is set up. We have these two sort of core pieces of our platform. One is, and really the fundamental base of the solution, our permit workflow system, and this is going to be that permit management, land management system that you're familiar with, and you probably have some version of already to track plan review, inspections, and payments and things like that. But really, what sets Camino apart, I think, from most other systems like that, is that we also offer this intelligent guide that works alongside and live on top of that workflow system. And this guide, again, is meant to drive that sort of automated self-service experience that we all ideally are looking for in a permit process, where if I'm a homeowner or a business owner, I can largely find what I need on my own and sort of be walked through the process online without needing to pick up the phone or time to come meet with somebody at the counter. The reason we like to display it this way is just as a reminder that these two pieces of technology don't have to be used together. We can set these up independently depending on your situation. So, you could use it all together and have a fully integrated, guided Camino system. Or if you, say, have your own permit workflow system that you like and don't necessarily want to replace, you can set up our guide on top of it. So just one other thing that we wanted to touch on quickly, because this is sort of our newer product, and this is Inspections. Now, we aren't necessarily going to demo this on today's webinar. We may if there's some time, but this is probably something that if you want to see, we recommend setting up sort of a separate call. You reach out to us on our website to do that, and we'd be happy to let you try this out. But do just want to note that this is a solution that we've rolled out and that has been quite successful and popular with a lot of our customers. This essentially lets you run an inspection remotely through, say, a smartphone or a tablet without needing an inspector on site. And what we've tried to do here is make it a solution that can work on any device at any time, so you don't need software downloads, you don't need apps to be installed. So you can just literally launch a session, run that inspection without any friction, and the solution will record video, let you take notes, confirm their location. So it just brings in a lot of tools to help make that process as streamlined as possible.
And Nate, I'll just add that the website is a great place to request a demo if you think of that later, but if it's during the webinar, you can also let us know, again, using that Q&A button, and I'll just make a note of that and make sure that we follow up just to save you the extra step.
Yeah. And I'll just add, we do apologize if there's some, some audio problems. It seems we're trying to figure out where that's from. If you are hearing it a little bit garbled like we are, it appears to maybe just be an issue with the platform we're using, Zoom, since it's affecting a few different people. So anyway, apologize for the audio quality, but hopefully we're still coming through okay, and you can hear us. Okay, so with that, I think we'll jump into the demonstration. These are just some of the different agencies that we're working with, and just helpful to emphasize again, if you're newer to Camino, that this is not new software. We are in use in a number of organizations across the country. I think up to 40 agencies right now. Okay, so like Kona said, this is the website. So if at any point you do want to request a demo for anything, feel free to go to camino.ai. But without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the software itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and basically take us through some different examples here of how Camino works, and I think what's most helpful for a for a session like this is to really start from the top and go through what it would look like to sort of start a project and apply for it as a say a homeowner, and then I'll take you into the back end of the software and go through the administrative tools, things like managing tasks, NAMs, and inspections. And like I said, my goal here is to touch on just some of the new functionality that we've released that you may not have seen. So what I have up here as the starting place is the online portal that any new applicant would see. And this is really the core of what we talk about. We talk about the Camino guide. This looks very different probably than a lot of other permit software that you're used to, where I'm not coming in here and clicking, I want to apply for a building permit, or clicking, I want to apply for a planning permit. We start at a higher level than that with what the user is actually trying to get done. So in this case, I could make a selection like I want to do a residential project or do a commercial project. And as I make selections in the system, it's going to go down to greater levels of detail, sort of letting me identify exactly the work I'm trying to do. So, I could say I want to build a new home, or do an addition, say I want to do a new accessory structure. And then as you see, as I'm drilling in, sort of getting more and more granular into the types of projects. So I could something like I want to build a new garage, for example. And I'll come back to this later, but everything you're seeing in here is configurable within the Camino software. So these are not preset categories. I mean, every agency can decide how they want to organize their different project types, and then of course, what types of information and work get triggered as a result.
And Nate, that actually does answer one of the questions that came in, which was just, how easy is this to change when things come up? And I'm not sure what the background of the question is, but I can imagine that with COVID, as we see things like outdoor dining permits or, small business relief grants, things like that, the question might be about how easy is it to respond quickly to things that come up and change those buckets that we see when we are a customer looking at the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, I'll go over it how this how this setup process works. So once I choose what I'm trying to build, again, say it's a garage, we can then set up the system to prompt for an address. And what's really cool about the way our system works is when you choose an address in the system, it's not just capture it for the sake of record keeping. We actually have a pretty sophisticated engine on the back end that allows us to take an address and check it against things like the zone, check it against whether you're in a floodplain, a fire hazard area, a historic preservation district. All of the things that make a project allowed versus not, or things that might make it or might have different requirements as you're going through your permit process. So when I hit confirm location behind the scenes, our system is triggering a bunch of logic to say, okay, well, here are the different things you're going to be asked to do or not asked to do based on that geographic location. And then, of course, I'm answer some questions about my project. And just as a reminder, for those of you who've maybe seen this before, this is not necessarily part of the permit application. We're still not quite at that point yet. The point of the questions is to help decide what my application process and what my permit process might look like. So these questions were going to tell me things like whether, well, one, whether a permit's even required, but more important and more likely things like what types of plans I need to submit, what inspections are required, and maybe things like what type of fees I'm going to owe. So again, this is all done in a very service way, where, I can even click on little things to, get helper text to explain what I'm looking at. It's very much like you're using something like TurboTax. I know we all probably just did our taxes. So goal is to make this more like using a TurboTax than trying to, go through and figure out the tax forms on your own. So I'm going to go ahead and just provide some answers to these. Again, this is really just going to help figure out what my permit process looks like. Go ahead and submit that. I have a question here that is going to help calculate some fees. I'll submit that too. And as soon as I finish all that, I'm now presented with what we call the guide. Now, again, this is designed and laid out to give me an overview of what my process is going to look like. So, I'll go over this in a second. But not only is this helping me see what my permit process is, this is also now a sort of a task list or a project management system that I'm going to use to sort of work through that permit process, and that agency staff are going to use well. So all these items along the left of the screen, this has now become sort of a collaborative a project management system that everybody can use to sort of track what's done, what's not, and also work together on things like, again, plan reviews and inspections. So again, do encourage you, please post any questions you have. Again, happy to pause at any point to address things. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is submit a permit application. You can see some of these items on the list are marked as being required. So that just means that I need to go ahead and finish those before I can submit my application. You can see the submit button here is grayed out. So some of this is information that I just need to review. And when I review those items, I can simply click Mark Complete, and that'll track the things that I've already sort of read, or maybe disclaimers that I'm agreeing to. And at any point in here, you can attach handouts or upload files, documents, things like that for somebody to read. So let's say I've reviewed these different items. I've reviewed my setbacks and my fire zone requirements. You know, so like this is an example of something that maybe was triggered automatically based on GIS data. But then we move into the permit application itself. So this is where I'm going to fill out the details that are required for my project. And again, some of these may be required, some not. So I can fill out my details. So I could, you know, if I'm the property owner, I can put in my information here, whatever it is. I can put in my contractor's information. Now, some of you who maybe haven't seen Camino in a few months, this functionality is newer. We have recently added this ability to create these types of digital forms. And what this ties into are those data fields that I was mentioning earlier. So again, I'll sort of come back to this a little bit later, but as I'm filling out this form, each of these data points is being pulled into, again, what we use data fields, and those can go into things like rules or fee calculations, stuff like that. So it's very powerful, and there's a lot of things you can do with the information once it's gathered.
And Nate, we did have a great question come in, which is, as you're entering in this information, will it save your progress so that you can put it down and then log back in and start where you left off?
Yes, absolutely. So you'll notice as I filled this in, I hit save, and you know, that marked build is being complete. And you can see on the left here that actually, you know, sort of marked that whole step as being done now. So if I were to leave, you know, you'll notice up here I'm logged in. If I were to leave, log out, or just close the window, when I come back, this will resume wherever I left off. So in case, you know, this will basically resume at this step in the process, and I can keep going. So yeah, everything you do is saved in real time. Great question. Now, there are other ways to collect information. And again, this is also something that we're, if again, you maybe haven't seen Camino in the last few months, in addition to being able to create your own digital forms, we do let you upload existing forms and digitize them. So if you have a PDF from something like that and you want to keep that structure, you can load that into Camino and use, we have basically a sort of a visual builder where you can drag forms on top, fields on top of it to collect data. And then once you do that, you can fill this out digitally. And again, these fields can tie back to those data fields that I was mentioning earlier. So as an example, if you have multiple forms that all require same information, you don't have to ask somebody to fill it in 5 different times. The first time they fill it in, you can have it auto-populate every other form that has that information. And of course, we can do things like digital signatures if needed.
And Nate, just making my way through these questions here, somebody did ask, you do digital signatures, are they counted the same way that what signatures with hard copies are?
Yes, I mean, provided that your jurisdiction, recognizes and allows digital signatures, yes, although that oftentimes is sort of a agency by agency decision.
And I do think because of COVID in particular, we have heard of a lot of agencies that have updated their rules to allow for more digital work than a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned earlier, a lot of this functionality was released to help agencies that needed to figure out how to work in a more remote way. So for example, we've now reached a plan submission step. Well, a lot of cities and counties that we work with historically have done this through hard copies. You'd in your paper forms or plans. Obviously, with COVID and with some city halls closed, this wasn't possible. And we've helped a lot of agencies roll out these types of digital submission portals. And it's super simple. You can set the system up to specify based on the project type which type of forms are required. In this case, plot plans and engineered plans. And what I have to do is drag and drop from my desktop the files, and once they upload, again, the step will be marked once I upload the right number of files, and then that file gets attached to my application. Go ahead and do the second one here. I also want to touch on this chat feature. Now, this isn't necessarily new. We've had this in here for a while, but we have updated the way this works. So as a reminder, this is a way to keep communication all within the Camino system. So let's say I had a question about these plans, I wanted to make a note on them. I could just put that message here. I could say, please note that on page 3, I have included, details on the foundation. Do I need more? So I can post a question like this, and what that'll do is alert the agency that there's been a question, and then they can come in and respond to it. Now, you can always do that directly from Camino. You can log in and chat right here in the system, but what we've recently released is email integration as well, so that you don't have to enter Camino to reply. What you can do is you can specify specific users based on the type of project, and then those users will get an email alert that there's been a message, and all they have to do is reply to that email. So I'll see this in my inbox. I can reply to that email, hit send, and then that message will automatically go back into Camino, get logged here, and then it will automatically trigger an email to the applicant who posted this in the place. And so it's basically kind of like having a CRM system. Everybody can just work out of their email, but all of those messages are going to be tracked here in one thread in Camino, so that communication isn't lost. And what's really helpful is if somebody who wasn't originally involved comes in later, they see that history. It's not buried in somebody's inbox.
And Nate, just a couple more questions that I wanted to
please.
Hand over in the order that we're getting them. Does the system have a way to register contractors for municipality? And I think the goal here is how to minimize contractors entering in the same information over and over again when they're starting a guide.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So so we can help you set that up. We can even help you integrate with a state licensing board, for example, if you want to have contractors' like information verified by a third party.
Great, thank you. And while I am seeing these questions come in, the next one was, how can you extract data from the digital forms? Is this the same? Is it the same way you can with the form created by Camino? So I believe that the question is the data that is entered in the data fields as well as the data in the digital fillable forms extracted? Oops, I may have just lost you on audio.
I think we actually lost you a little bit there. And okay. Again, we do apologize that Zoom seems having some audio problems. But again, I'll try to address that. So yeah, the information entered in the fields, the forms, that can all be linked back to the same fields as we were mentioning. So yeah, when you enter it in one place, it'll automatically get to everywhere else. So, final thing I'll just note here is fees. So, if you have fees that need to be paid as part of an application, that can be done here through this interface. A user can pay fee, and then they can pay with a credit card. We have our own payment system, or we could integrate with a third-party one if that's desirable. And once I, finish these fees, I could, of course, move this to a submitted state. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and switch now to the back end because I want to, a little bit of that. And actually, that's the side where there's been a bunch of updates. So I do want to make sure we are covering some of those. And then I can also show you, what might happen here once this application was finished and submitted. So What I've pulled up here is the internal view into Camino. So again, this is what agency staff would use to manage applications, things like that. And before I move forward, it looks like there's one more question that came in on chat, and this question is whether it's a live chat or dependent on email. So it is not a live chat. Well, yes and no. So it's not necessarily a live chat where you have to be responding in real time. Now, if you do respond, that response will show up right in Camino. So if you respond quickly, they will see it. But let's say they leave Camino, then they would be notified by email, and then they could come back at it. So it'll work in both ways, essentially. That's a good question. So like I was mentioning here, this is the submit interface. So this is where you're going to see every project in the system. You can see the address, the type of product, the status. Now, this is where some of the new functionality has been added. Those of you who, again, or maybe haven't seen Camino in a little bit, we've recently added the ability to sort of customize and create your own views or reports in the system. So you can actually pull in different fields to this view and then filter on them. So for example, if I have a data field that I've created, like the square footage of the garage, I can actually pull in to this report. So I could search for that data field, garage square footage, pull it in, and then you'll see that shows up over here on the right in this view. And then once I have that in the view, I can even filter on it. So if I wanted to pull up all garages, for example, that have a square footage of more than 500 square feet, I could search that way. I could say, show me all garages where that's more than 500, and apply that filter just like that. So it's a really cool and easy way to search for projects, create reports to see the volume of different types of projects. So again, this is new. If you haven't seen Camino in the last few months, this is new functionality that basically lets you pull in any data you have in the system and generate these reports right here. And then, of course, you can also export these. So if you wanted to pull these into Excel or things to create graphs or visualizations, you could do that as well. So if we wanted to actually then look at one of these submissions, so let's say I wanted to pull up this project that I just started front end, I could go ahead and open this up, and then we can see sort of the internal view for looking at this project. Now, again, here's a second area where there's been some recent updates. We've redesigned this whole interface, and this was actually as of just last week. So if any of you haven't seen Camino in the last couple of weeks, this is a new sort of refreshed face that hopefully makes it a lot easier to sort of see what's going on and just gives you a lot more room to view this information. We also have some new items over here on the left that I'll touch on. So up here on the top is the status bar. This is where you can update the status of the project, things like that. But over here on the left, we have the project details. So a couple new things here. The first is we now are showing other submissions at the same location. So this was actually requested by some of our users. We wanted the ability when looking at a given project to automatically see if there were other projects going on at the same address or at the parcel. So the system will now do that. You can see, this is submission 2020-75. We get 2020-65 is also at this location. And we can see, another garage being built. I guess these people are building 2 garages at their property. But so this is a really neat feature. And if I go ahead and click on that, it'll just open up that project in sort of a separate window. So I could look at those side by side and get a, higher view on what's going on at this property. Below that, you'll see the activity feed. This was rolled out earlier this year. We'll show you sort of a running feed of updates to the project, communications happened. So for example, you can see the note that I made earlier about my engineered plans and as shown as a timeline. So you get sort of this chronological view of everything that's happened for the project. Now above that, something else new is this subscriber. So again, something else that we had a lot of requests for was the ability to subscribe to a project. And this is, again, helpful if maybe you're a permit coordinator, or maybe you're the building official manager in the department, and maybe there are some projects that you just want to keep an eye on. What you can do is you can subscribe to them by clicking this button, and then just choose what type of notifications you want to get. So you could say, I'd like to be updated anytime there's activity. I want to be updated anytime the status changes, so maybe when the permit's issued or things like that. Or you could just sort of add yourself to this and choose to watch without notifications. And that would just basically add your name to this project. You could go look up the projects you're tied to, but you won't get any alerts about it.
And Nate,
and once I myself, yeah, go ahead.
We did have a great question come in. So will the activity show recent activity for an active project? So for example, the last inspection performed with the result, the date, the time, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this activity feed will basically just show a running history of what has happened on the project. Now, not everything that happens is currently shown in the activity feed. There are some items that don't, but we are working to add sort of add more and more into that feed. So, in the near future, you can expect basically anything that happens on the project to be shown there in that feed. Yeah, great question. So, as I was noting, I've added myself as a subscriber, and then I can see here. So what's cool is that you can sort of quickly get a sense of everybody who's involved in the project. And something else neat here is that when you assign a task to a user, or when another user comes in and does work on this project, they will automatically get added to this list of subscribers. So again, if you're coming as a, maybe a plan reviewer, and you want to quickly see, okay, who are the other 5 people that have been working on this, you would see them here. So switching to the sort of project that's up here, like I noted, data fields, this is a new addition to the system, but this is a way to sort of, organize information about the project into one place. And we do now let you group fields. So you can create data field groups that might break things up into like project details, property owner details, contractor details. So a really cool way to kind of easily digest what's going on here. And of course, these can be edited. You can add new data fields as needed, decide if they're public or private for users. So a lot of cool functionality here. Below that, you can see the questions and answers were provided as the user went through the guide. And then a really important section below that, we get into workflow. So this is where you can actually see the different steps and tasks associated with this project and see what's been completed and what hasn't. So if I switch to a view of all steps, I can actually even see all the application steps that were completed by the applicant. So as an example of where this might be helpful, you may remember I didn't actually my application payments. So let's say this particular user didn't want to pay online, they wanted to come in and pay with a check. So what you could do is you could simply pull up this view here, open up their required fees, and then you'll notice on the fee there's a button that says Mark as paid. And by clicking on that button, you'll see it takes me to a view of the transaction where I can come here and sort of manually override the payment and just say, paid with check number, and then I put in a check number here for record keeping. And that would now, my application fees is paid, and that would show up here as well. So, so really easy to come in here, interact with the workflow, modify it as needed. Actually, by doing that, I've now unlocked the ability to move this application forward to submitted. So I could even do that here. I could come in and click on the status, add this into a submitted state, and I could even put in an email here, a message here to get sent automatically as an email. I could say, we will start the plan review and notify you when done. And that'll just get sent as an email to the applicant.
And of course, an
and notice that
click
sorry, go ahead, Kona.
Well, I was just clarifying that you're not reliant on staff to hit submit for an application. So, of course, if an applicant has done all the required steps or if they get notified that their check came in, they can also go ahead and click submit. So you have some options there in terms of how to move an application forward.
Yeah, yep, exactly. So, it looks like there was a question of whether there's a way to audit this function after payment. And yeah, I think that may be what you were addressing, Kona. Yeah, absolutely. This does not require staff to come and take that step. The applicant would actually be automatically prompted to submit once the payment happens. I did point out that after I updated this to submitted, you'll see that history got added to my activity feed. So again, you're sort of just building up this timeline of everything that's happened for the project. In terms of internal tasks, these various items can be, used as a task management system. So, for example, if a planning department meeting had to happen, you could use this to track that. So, if I work on the planning department, I could come in and mark this done when it happened. But again, let's say something now needs to get added to the workflow. Let's say as a result of that planning meeting, we decide that a planning commission hearing needs to happen. Well, there's this button up here that says add a step, and I can click on it and then search for the type of step I want to add. In this case, a planning commission hearing. And again, I could notify the applicant via email that this has been added. I can add this step, and we'd see now my workflow has this additional task on it for a planning commission hearing. So, this workflow gets automatically constructed by the user going through the guide and answer questions, but you're not locked into that workflow as you go through. If things come up or change, it's very easy for you to add and move requirements from the list. Now, of course, these all are tasks, and tasks can be assigned directly through the system. So let's say I wanted to assign building review. I can come up here and choose somebody to assign this to. Now, this is another area where there's some new functionality. We not only let you assign to a specific user, you can assign to a group. So again, this is new. So if I wanted to just assign this particular task to the building department broadly, and then let somebody within the building department go self-assign this, I could do that. I can assign to building. I can put a due date on this, say, we need this done by the 31st. And then we would see that this is assigned to that department. The way that works is all the users in that group or in that department will then get notified, or when they come to their task list, they will see that there is a task assigned to their group, and choose to pull that and assign it to themselves, or a manager for that group could delegate that to a specific user. Again, very sort of cool way to manage workflow where there may not be a specific person that you want to assign to. So, just coming down the list here of things that we're looking at, this also new functionality, time tracking, you can now decide to turn on and do directly through Camino. So for Planner, for example, you can just come in and log hours. You can say, I worked on this for an hour and 10 minutes. You can say this was for building plan review. And as different users log their time, I'll just build up a sort of total for you so you can see how much time has been spent on this particular project. We have a map view that can pull in GIS data if you have that integrated. The documents, so we do document management and storage, so any documents uploaded or into the project show up here. You can always attach new ones at any time. And then we have issued documents and payment history, of course. So you can use the payment history down here to see transactions, or do things like, for example, issue refunds. So again, a lot of this isn't necessarily new. You've probably seen this before, but again, want to make sure I'm touching on this for anybody who might be new to seeing the system. But now I want to touch a few more items that are new just before we wrap up and leave some time for QA, because I know we're getting close to the end of this session. So there was a lot of interest in inspection functionality, so I do want to make sure I'm touching on that. We have recently rolled out the ability to do online inspection scheduling and sort of inspection management. So coming back to the applicant view, just to show you what that might look like, and I'm going to come to the building inspection task here to show you what this interface looks like. So when it comes time to schedule an inspection, you can set up a different calendar availability based on the type. So you could, okay, for these types of building inspections, allow them to schedule on these days of the week up to say 7 days in advance. And as an applicant, I will see here the days available to me, and I can make a selection. I can say I want to schedule this on the 21st in the morning, and I can enter my phone number and hit request, and that will allow show me a little information that I've made my request. I can see it here as well, and what that will do is go ahead and alert or put this on the calendar for that inspector. So if I come back in here as inspector and I pull up my task, I can see that this request has been made, and I can either decide to affirm it or change it. So, let's say I see that this is requested for the morning, but I really can't do the morning that day because of change. So I'm going to go ahead and schedule this for the afternoon, maybe 3:30 in the afternoon. I go ahead and log that and go ahead and confirm that. So that's how you can confirm an inspection in here. Now, you can also use this system to manage the inspection. So let's say you're out, in the field, working on your iPad, for example, and you want to go ahead and complete this inspection. You could go ahead and note whether this was a pass or a fail. I could say maybe this was failed, and then once I do that, this will automatically create a follow-up inspection task that can be rescheduled. And of course, you could also fill out an inspection checklist here, do digital signatures on it, and attach any photos that you have from the field. So sort of full-end inspection management, definitely some new functionality in here. And of course, this does tie to our virtual inspection system. Now, like I said, we aren't necessarily planning to demo that. If you want to see our virtual inspections, again, just reach out. We're happy to do a one-on-one demo. But you'll notice that when I pull up an inspection task, there is also a prompt to launch a virtual inspection. So that's some new functionality that, again, would let you do this directly to somebody's phone and do the inspection without leaving your office.
And Nate, we did try to cover a lot of new things in today's webinar. So we know that it's a lot of information, and you might have follow-up questions about how this works for your agency. So don't be shy if you'd like to see a longer demo or see something more specific to your team. But we did have one more question about GIS data and how that works. Do you think we have time to take a quick look at that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question is, how often is the GIS data updated? So we do allow you to set up your own GIS integrations if you want. So down here at the very bottom is a section that's layers, and this is where you can add GIS layers. So I can put in a name and say this is my par layer, for example, and say this is a cadastral layer. And then once I get this layer, I can go ahead and add data to it. So if I hit import feature set, this would essentially allow me to upload a shapefile, or we do support direct Esri integration. So you could, plug in basically an endpoint for an Esri service where we could pull in the layers. So yeah, you actually can manage this in here. You can have it update as frequently as you need it to. But actually, it's good this question came up because this is new. We did just roll out this sort of GIS self-management in the last week. So this is also some pretty cool new functionality that we are quite excited about, because previously you had to have us load these layers for you, and now now there is this ability to sort of this on your own. So I know we are reaching sort of the end of the session. There's a couple other things that we could touch on. Just a couple of quick things I'll show here real fast. One is a calendar view. So for inspection management, we do now show you all inspections on a calendar. So you can see, okay, there's an inspection on this day that's unassigned on the date. That'll show you inspections there. And then we also do have a payments report. So if you want to see a financial history and export this into a financial system, you can generate financial reports here and again export those to CSV. So there's a couple other items that that are pretty new and were pretty hot, highly requested. So you just want to make sure it's in those. So I think with that, we'll sort of wrap up the demo portion. Again, as Kona said, that is a lot of new functionality. So hopefully this wasn't too overwhelming. But again, our goal is just to show some of the new things that we've released. And again, happy to go over this with any of you one-on-one. But yeah, I think at this point, we'll just leave this open for any questions that anybody else might have and answer those as they come in. It does look like one more question has come in, a question about whether the software allows you to set the system up to only allow AM/PM requests and also give the user a standard message. So yeah, you actually can set the system up to only allow AM/PM. You do not have to let the user request a specific time. You can just have them choose whether it's morning, afternoon, and that's it. So yeah, it's a good question. In terms of the standard message, no, that's not something we support, but something that we likely will support at some point. Any other questions coming in, or
Oh, that looks like
a good place to wrap up?
So far. Thank you so much for the questions that were asked. We love seeing that. Like Nate mentioned, these features are developed specifically based on customer feedback. So getting your questions and your comments about this is always really helpful for our team. And we were really excited to show this to you. So we do hope it's been useful. And please do get in touch about any follow-up questions that you have as you think about what you've seen today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'd love to hear from you, whether it's feedback on stuff you saw, ideas for things that you'd like to see that you didn't see. We love that type of input as well. And certainly, if any of this can hold your agency, we'd love to talk to you about that. So with that, I think we will wrap up. Thank you, Kona, for helping drive this, and I hope you all have a great end of your week and a great weekend. All right.
Great day,
Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much. Take care.